Essentially, I think the purpose of today is for that there's probably quite a few beginners in the room that have maybe heard the term, blockchain and remittance and this kind of stuff, and sort of interested in how it might benefit them, or I've just heard the words and sort of want to see a little bit more, but perhaps are not experts. So I think the presentation today will be starting off from the assumption that you have no concept of anything, how it works or anything like that. So we're going to do a 4-part series, and in each different part of the series, we'll be sort of focusing on different subjects in the space. And at the end of it, there'll be a certificate as well presented on the blockchain for your participation in the webinar series with RemitONE and BitSpark. So thank you very much all for coming for this inaugural first session, and I think we can sort of kick it off from there. You'll have to excuse me. I'm a little bit under the weather, but I will be okay. So today's agenda, we're going to sort of take it from the start and go to the end. But I want to sort of focus a little bit on what does it actually mean to money transfer companies in the industry. So there's quite a few MTOs on the call today that are perhaps looking at this. So what does it actually mean to you? Often when we talk to customers, it's all very well to talk about, oh, blockchain this, blockchain that, but what does it actually mean? More than a buzzword in a newspaper article or something like that. Does it help you improve your margins? Does it allow you to send to more places, or does it improve your existing business processes? And do you actually have to change what you're currently doing, very much? And also we'll touch a little bit on the regulatory acceptance as well, which is an interesting topic around the world as well. But I think what we'll do is maybe about halfway we'll pause for any questions if anyone has any burning desires to answer, and then at the end as well we'll have a Q&A session as if anybody has any other follow-ups or anything to add from there. But that's sort of the idea and the format of today. So we'll get stuck into it. So what is a blockchain? And I've been at a bunch of conferences in the last year where this question, it still does come up, even though we are 10 years into blockchain technology now. So it was Bitcoin that really pioneered it. You may have heard of Bitcoin. It started about 10 years ago, so it's not exactly I would say a new technology, but I think everyone's still certainly in the remittance industry, it's still a new thing there. So it does change a little bit about how things work. So essentially, the diagram on the bottom here, we've got a centralized and a decentralized ledger. What does that mean? What is a blockchain to begin with? It's more of a ledger of keeping record of things which happen. So you can imagine an accounting ledger, right? So what does an accounting ledger do? Well, it tabulates your transactions which are coming in and transactions which are going out. And double accounting records was, I think it's a couple of hundred years old, maybe a couple thousand years old now. But essentially, it's a way to make sure and tabulate events which happen sequentially. And that's what a ledger is. That's what an accountant does, right? So and we're all sort of used to that. So what a blockchain does, essentially, it is a shared accounting ledger. That's one way to put it, in that everybody has a copy of the same ledger. On the diagram on the left, you'll see this centralized ledger, whereby you've got a number of different institutions, and they all sort of they have a copy of the same ledger because they all connect to the one location. The ledger is like it lives in one standard location, and that's it. And this is kind of how the world has worked for quite a long time now, in that you have sort of one party which might share the ledger. So that might be your bank, and your bank is the one who is recording transactions in and out, and you have to trust the bank in order to update the ledger and keep you updated. And maybe there's a way to automate that, maybe there's not. Maybe it's easy to do, maybe it's not. It really depends on who your person in the middle there is, called that clearinghouse, and whoever sort of has that centralized ledger, and everybody else sort of hangs off them, essentially. So that's sort of how the world works currently. But what we've got on the right is a distributed ledger, and essentially that's where everybody has a copy of the same ledger. So how is this relevant to blockchain? Well, if we know that everybody has a copy of the same ledger and all of the records are up to date all at the same time, it means that nobody can cheat anybody else, and it's an efficient way of being able to share data in a trustless way. So essentially, a distributed ledger the ledger doesn't live in one location. Everywhere has a copy of exactly the same ledger. So that's sort of a fundamental concept which we'll sort of build upon as we go. But because we have this ledger, well, what a cryptocurrency is essentially it is a unit of account on this ledger. So if I have a ledger saying that I have 1,000 units, and then I send you 1,000 units, and then you send somebody else 100 units or something like that, we all need to keep a record of that on the ledger. But you could also think of those units, you could treat them as like a currency. And essentially that's how Bitcoin started, was that Bitcoin was a decentralized ledger, which was a unit of account, which resembled very much like money. And essentially we've got some of the traits of money here, which I really like this one. What essentially this page is we're talking a little bit about the traits of money, and how does a cryptocurrency fit into these traits. And you've got a sort of comparison here. For thousands of years we've had gold as this sort of unit of account, and a means of people to be able to transact around the world. Everybody shares the same unit of account, being a piece of gold, whether it be an ounce or whatever sort of measurement it might be. It's fungible. It's non-consumable. Fungible means that if I have a piece of gold, for me it has essentially the same value as it might do on the other side of the world, and I'm able to exchange that quite easily, in that both of those pieces of gold will have pretty much the same value. We have portability. It has been quite portable in that you can make a physical coin, you can put that in your pocket. It's not like a barrel of oil or something, where the barrel of oil might it's going to run through your fingers and run away. Having a metal does make sense for portability. Durability as well, divisibility. We've got an interesting one here, scarce as well, down the bottom there. Essentially, there's only a set amount of gold in the Earth's crust, so the amount of gold that exists in the world is finite. And it comes into circulation at a set rate. Basically, can you dig it out of the ground, and can you mint it? And that's how it comes into circulation. In comparison to, say, the US dollar or a national currency, they are not scarce. So essentially, a central bank can print a number of these pieces of paper at any time they wish, to however much velocity or whatever they want, essentially. So it is not scarce, which means that generally over the long term, gold has it's held its values for the last 2,000 years. That there's an interesting thing whereby you could buy a toga in ancient Rome, and the equivalent of a nice suit for an ounce of gold, and an ounce of gold today you can buy pretty much the same thing. Whereas with a US dollar, the purchasing power of a US dollar has gone down over time. So however, a US dollar is more portable, it's digitized, and sort of national currencies surround us every day. So it's something that we certainly live with. So cryptocurrency tends to solve a lot of the different problems of which it might be. So when we're talking about scarcity, in the case of Bitcoin, there is a set limit of the amount of Bitcoin which exists. So there's never going to be more than 21 million Bitcoin that would exist. Likewise, security, easily transactable. These are some of the things whereby if I just have a mobile phone, I can send you some Bitcoin. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, you can receive it. So you don't need this sort of counterparty, this clearinghouse on the left here. They don't need to approve anything. If I send you a Bitcoin, it's sent peer-to-peer. So we don't actually need any other third party to be able to moderate that transaction. So it makes it very easily transactable. And essentially what you see is that much like gold has a price all over the world, Bitcoin also has a price all over the world. So that's just a sort of a little bit of a background into what is a cryptocurrency. But the main point here, I think, is it is a means of conferring value across borders. Is something which is interesting for us in the remittance industry, in that we can use, essentially, we don't care how much, what we use to get value somewhere. The important thing is that we are able to exchange value overseas, with little friction, and it's easy to do, and so on. So, whether that is a bank, or whether that is a thing called a Bitcoin, or whether that is something else, our main sort of goal in the remittance industry is, can we provide efficiencies in being able to move this money overseas? Is it able to do that? Can you do that quickly? Can you do that cheaply? Can you do that 24/7? Another good point here is that, well, banks close at 5 p.m. every day, and then they're not open until 9 a.m. Every day. And then for 2 days a week, they are just closed. So if you want to transact for quite a large time period there, you can't. You have to wait until these sort of these entities called banks are open, and then you can transact. Whereas with Bitcoin, it's 24/7. So you can send value to another country and exchange it there 24/7, which is a not something which doesn't get as much coverage as it should, but it's actually very, very important when you look at things. How's the voice? Okay, is it holding up?
Yeah, sure, it's perfect.
Excellent. So we spoke a little bit about sort of acceptance as well, and if you have this thing which you can move across borders very easily called a Bitcoin, and this thing called a Bitcoin has a value. It doesn't really matter too much what the value is, whether it's $1 or whether it's $10,000. The point is that you are able to move this thing which has a value and be able to exchange it at both ends. And often you can also exchange it for different goods and services. And there's over about 500,000 companies that, at least I was looking at it at the last research, which accept Bitcoin as a means of payment. So probably about 3 months back, I came to visit the RemitONE guys in London, and all of my flights and accommodation, that was all paid for in Bitcoin. I pretty much use it to travel around the world these days. It's just easier to pay for things than, say, a credit card or something like that. And whether it's sort of suits here in Hong Kong or groceries in the US, there are means of acceptance for this thing called a Bitcoin. And it seems that it's only growing as the years go by, as sort of more merchants sign up for various reasons. Maybe they're having problems with their credit card processor. That's a common issue. Some processors, A, they charge high fees. B, they might not like particular industries. As we all know, banks are not particularly fond of the remittance industry at the moment with de-risking. So having this alternative as a means to accept payments is pretty useful. So quite a few people use it for just buying stuff or buying and selling stuff. not even for, say, the moving of money. But yeah, so it does have an acceptance pretty much all around the world. Are there any questions so far before I move on? We've spoken a little bit about sort of what it is and how the ledger works, but I just want to open it up if there's any burning comments. So was it slide 7, Usama? Did you want to take this one?
Yeah. Hi. It's totally up to you, George. If you just want to crack on, I was thinking just giving a high level overview of obviously how. And I know you go into quite a lot of detail here in terms of cryptocurrency itself. My only concern is, I know it's a 4-part series, but some of the attendees today may not be obviously attending the next couple of series. And I noticed one of the slides you do go through in detail how the crypto works. So once you get past that bit, I think I can possibly just elaborate on that, how we work together in that sense, and how the remittance guys joining us particularly can take advantage of that particular service.
Okay, no worries. Well, how about I sort of I go on till we get to that point, and then I'll hand it over to you for a bit.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So, we've spoken about what is this currency, this thing which is transactable over these borders. But how does it really benefit the money transfer industry? Essentially, the main point is de-risking. You don't need a bank in order to send money. So if you are having problems with the bank, which pretty much everybody is, we have use cases going back almost 4 years now of money transfer companies that have been using us to send money around Southeast Asia without the need for a bank. So they are a licensed MTO in their jurisdiction. They are using cryptocurrency in order to make payments in cash at the other end. So they use our system to be able to convey that, and the money gets there, and there's no need for a bank at any stage in that transaction. So that is a huge benefit for the remittance industry. I was in a conference last year in Australia, I met one of the people from Australia, and they said in 2016, 75% of the MTOs in Australia lost their bank accounts. 75%. That's crazy. That's 300 companies. And it was because everybody pretty much had the same bank, and the bank just said, sorry, we don't want to service this industry anymore. See you later. So what do you do in that point? Unfortunately, many of those businesses went out of business. But with cryptocurrency, you have an option. You do have some sort of option. Another important point is it can be quicker, faster, and cheaper as well to do, which I'll get into a little bit maybe in the next slide. But these are some of the 2 core things to keep in the back of your mind, right? Whereby you can still exist as an MTO, but you don't need a bank, and it could offer you some efficiencies in pricing. And I can give you some examples as well, for that. So here's an example of a transaction, right? This is sort of the main slide. You have 2 ends. You have a sender destination and a receiving destination. So in this case, we'll take, say, Hong Kong and the Philippines. The Philippines, as you'd be aware, is a large recipient country for remittances. I think about $28 billion this year. And they're actually, I would say, on the forefront of cryptocurrency remittances, and they pretty much always have. Since 2014, there's been some very solid companies in the Philippines that have been doing this, and it's really sort of growing there. So how does it work? Well, if we have some Hong Kong dollars in Hong Kong, let's say we're a money transfer shop, well, we need to get that to the recipient in the Philippines, who maybe they have a bank account, or maybe they are picking up a cash transaction at a physical money transfer shop. Well, what we do is fundamentally the cash is deposited in Hong Kong at a company, let's say like a BitSpark or a Bitcoin company, let's say. That cash is used to buy Bitcoin, and then the Bitcoin is then sold in the Philippines. That's essentially it. So that there's two transactions here. You know, one is buying the Bitcoin, and the other is selling the Bitcoin. And from that, you can get an exchange rate. So you can determine what the HKD to PHP exchange rate is by essentially doing this transaction. So you're buying Bitcoin and then you're selling it. Now, you can do that instantly, which means that you don't care what the price of Bitcoin is at any point in time. You know, let's say the price of Bitcoin is $1. Well, if I have 1,000 Hong Kong dollars, you know, therefore I buy 1,000 Bitcoin, and then I sell 1,000 Bitcoin instantly. You know, or let's say the price of Bitcoin is $1,000. Well, I could buy 1 Bitcoin and then I could sell 1 Bitcoin at the other end. It doesn't really matter what the price of Bitcoin is at any point in time, as long as I can buy and sell it, pretty much instantly. Then that's the main thing. And what you'll also see is there are different prices for different countries around the world for Bitcoin and different cryptocurrencies. Think of it like like natural gas, right? Like the natural gas market. People pay for gas all around the world, you know, heating, cooking, whatever. But some countries have a much higher price than others. Well, why is that? Well, it's because there's more demand in, say, China than for gas than there is, say, you know, in Australia or something like that. So the price in China is higher, and the price in Australia is lower. The same is true for Bitcoin, in that there are some countries which have a higher demand and therefore a higher price for Bitcoin. So if I were to buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin in Hong Kong, it can be possible for me to sell that Bitcoin in the Philippines for maybe, you know, $1,100 or something like that. And you know, you could make money. So it offers the potential to actually make money when you send versus actually pay money. And you could think of it as like negative fees. Does anybody here have negative fees? I would say probably not. So that's really quite an interesting concept, whereby, you know, you can send $1,000 and you can get more than $1,000 arrive at the other end. That's pretty awesome, I would say. But that is all because in some countries and some places there is, you know, more demand than others, and there's a number of different companies around the world which specialize in solving this problem and just making it easy for money transfer companies to do and to transact in. So essentially, you know, that's how it works as the system, in that you're buying Bitcoin and then you're selling it. Now, remember, at the other end, the person doesn't want Bitcoin. They want cash. So when you sell that Bitcoin in the Philippines for the cash, well, now you have cash in the Philippines. And with that cash, then you can go and distribute it to, you know, however you might want to distribute it, whether it's via a bank transfer or via a money transfer shop or whatever it might be. The point is that now you have cash in the Philippines and you can distribute it through existing mechanisms. And that's how it works for many of the companies over there at the moment. So
sorry, George, may I just and this is where I sort of wanted to just even add to that, or just pick up a little bit. Sorry, guys. So for of you who have joined late, my name's Osama. I work for RemitONE, and I just really wanted to elaborate, or even go the other way, actually, make this more layman's terms, because again, I know some of you guys are not sort of completely aware and confident of how the cryptocurrency works. So just in a bit of layman terms, it is completely possible for BitSpark to give you a Hong Kong dollar to Philippine peso exchange rate. So just to clean things up a little bit, where at the moment you're seeing a Hong Kong dollar to Bitcoin, then Bitcoin back to Philippine peso, it is completely reasonable, completely possible, and to calculate straight from Hong Kong dollar to Philippine peso to make your lives a lot more easier. So what we're saying in essence is this. Let's just say I'm in the UK. I can literally go at the moment to a safe which BitSpark has and deposit some money in there. It will then be available for me instantly on an online portal or online. It's like again like online banking where I'll see my pound sterling sitting there. And then when I need to supply my payout partner, let's just say I'm doing UK to Nigeria, as an example, I can pop those funds into the safe. It will appear on my balance, and then I need to fund my payout partner in Nigeria in bulk, maybe once a week, because I'm pre-funding for my payments. I can then make a payment. Again, instantly through the Bitcoin method, because again it's all crypto. So the conversion we made at that time from GBP to, again, you can calculate to Nigerian Naira through the Bitcoin. It will make that conversion instantly. And then again, because it's all crypto, it's not going through the usual bank channels. It's not going through your Swift channels. There's no banking involved here, really. It's going through BitSpark's current connections to be paid out, because they can pay out in Nigeria, so they can collect the money in the UK. So in essence, that's what's happening. You're sort of cutting out the middleman. You're like using this online banking crypto system to top it up. Your funds are sitting there within the instant. They can provide you a GBP to Naira, GBP to Bitcoin, then Naira rate, and then top up your payout partner in Nigeria to pay out for you locally. So in essence, that is the sort of underlying point and the underlying sort of benefits to use something such as cryptocurrency. Again, it's instant. Let's just say, for example, you guys are topping up your payout partners maybe once a week or on a monthly basis. Of course, those payout partners, their banks could be localized, and you could be sending it from abroad, and that's where you're getting your FX rate from. Again, it can take a couple of days. You're sending a Swift transfer, but again, they're processing payments for you. Maybe you've got funds sitting there that need to be paid up, but again, your top up hasn't reached yet. This is an instant service here we're talking about, which is obviously the beauty of cryptocurrency itself, where you can have funds there at your destination instantly and top up, and again, and that's on many occasions as well at a better or more favorable exchange rate from what you might be seeing through the normal channels. Please correct me if I'm wrong, George, and if you'd like to sort of pick up from there. I just wanted to sort of again or maybe oversimplify and just clarify things for some of our attendees, our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for that. That was spot on. So one of the key points is that even though we're going into more detail here about sort of how it might work technically, for the customer, like, what do you see? You just see an exchange rate, and as simple as that, right? And then the money just deposits at one end and then gets paid out at the other end. And it's companies like us which manage all of the internal conversions and all this kind of stuff. That's not something which you need to concern yourselves with. So yeah, that's. Yeah, but this is essentially what we're doing behind the scenes. Is we're converting it in one currency and then selling it in the other currency, and that's how your money goes from one location to the other. So yeah, and this sort of workflow can work for many countries around the world. Nigeria is a great example. The Nigeria's sort of Bitcoin market is continuing to grow in the last year. There's plenty of places in Southeast Asia where it's also growing. You've got sort of East Africa as well. Quite a bit of activity there. Latin America is there's quite a few things in the Mexico corridor as well happening. So wherever you might be in the world, the likelihood is that certainly for the larger corridors, that there is some sort of Bitcoin solution for moving the money, into and out of those currencies. And the person at the other end, they don't even know, or they probably don't even care how, it's coming via this Bitcoin thing or whatever. They just know that they get the money. And that's the important thing, is that the customer shouldn't have to, care too much. Am I getting a Bitcoin transaction? Am I doing this? It just seamlessly, you put the money in one end and it comes out at the other, and whether it goes via Bitcoin or whatever other method, it doesn't matter too much, for the end customer. So
no, of course, but I would like to add to that, George. Sometimes it does matter, because going through the SWIFT network, you do have intermediary banks. With the crypto, you don't have that intermediary bank problem, where sometimes they take their slice off the top, or sometimes it's held for extra compliance. If they're not too happy with that payment, it might go through another route, and again, that intermediary bank is going to hold on to that payment. And again, with cryptocurrency, there is none of that.
Yeah, and another good point as well is that using crypto can also reduce the amount of money which you have to hold at your intermediaries, right? Because if you're using SWIFT and you're using all of these different intermediary banks and so on, generally you have to like pre-fund a larger amount, let's say on a weekend, to cope for transactions which might happen on a weekend. Therefore you have a bunch of money which is sort of sitting idle essentially, and you have to come up with a large sort of capital expenditure. One of the great things of crypto is it actually reduces
24 hours.
Exactly, because it can be done much quicker. So you don't have to have, these big pre-funding of balances. You can pretty much do it in real time, to be able to do that. So it reduces, and if you reduce the amount of money which you have to hold with the different partners, well, okay, you can put that money to better use. Doing whatever it is that you might need in your business. So that's another, really good benefit for using crypto as well. Yeah. So I mean, was there any other? I haven't had a look at the questions. Was there any other sort of questions on this part as well? The compliance stuff. We'll get to the compliance slide in a moment. Hold on. We'll get there. We've got sort of questions on the Naira. Yeah, we can talk a little bit about that. So I might continue and sort of go to the next slide, which is regulatory environment. There you go. And the answer is that it really depends on where you are in the world. So pretty much most OECD countries these days have some sort of stance on cryptocurrency and blockchain stuff. Not many have actually clarified it in the law. Many of them have, say, made statements about how this might be treated for tax purposes, or sort of some countries are not interested in regulating it. Some have made specific licenses for it. So we've got a couple of comments here from some different countries around the world. So Mexico, quite recently, they had a new bill passed the parliament for a regulatory regime specifically for cryptocurrency companies and exchanges. So now crypto exchanges, that is companies which exchange Bitcoin for whatever currency it might be, including the Mexican peso, they come under the oversight of the central bank, and they have a specific license. So that's one thing. The FCA hasn't been as forthcoming with anything like that. So there is no special cryptocurrency license in the UK. Some countries do have a specific cryptocurrency license. The FCA is sort of, maybe in future it might have such a thing, but at the moment there's a number of different comments about how is Bitcoin treated for AML purposes, how it's treated for tax purposes, how it's sort of treated in general as a commodity and not as a currency. If it is defined as a currency under UK law, then it would require an FX license, which it doesn't, because national currencies require FX licenses. So the FCA has been fairly hands-off, with things, whereas you've got Japan as well. Japan was one of the first countries to create an actual license for cryptocurrency. So we put that one in there as well. But it really, the main point is that it really depends on the jurisdiction that you're dealing with, and most jurisdictions around the world, most central banks, in fact. So it's the case in, say, Nigeria, it's the case in Indonesia, in Vietnam, that the central banks have said, look, this thing called cryptocurrency, it is not something which we regulate. It is also not something which we control. Our mandate as a central bank or a regulator is to manage the monetary policy of people who are licensed under us and also our currency. Because this is not our currency and it is not something licensed by us, we will issue warnings on it, but it is not something which comes under a regulatory regime. So many countries have said that, which kind of leaves cryptocurrencies in sort of this this area which has been prevalent for the last 10 years essentially, whereby you can use it, you can transact with it, you can make payments in it, but there's no prescribed sort of global remittance license or anything like that. It really is very regional and jurisdiction specific as well. So it really depends on what part of the world you might find yourself in. Certainly here in Hong Kong, it is not a regulated activity, and the regulator has said as such that they have no interest in regulating it, and it's sort of been like that for the last 5 years. They haven't really made any other statements on it other than that. In the Philippines, there is a specific Bitcoin license as well. So, and that's specifically for remittances. So that's a very interesting one as well. But I dare say maybe there's some questions about sort of the compliance side of things as well. We've got a question here: is BitSpark regulated crypto exchange in Hong Kong? There are no regulated crypto exchanges in Hong Kong because there is no regulation on crypto in Hong Kong. What the government has said is companies must abide by the AML law, which is the same as if you are a lawyer. A lawyer has to conduct AML just the same as a crypto exchange. So it comes under that same law, but there is no prescribed regulation for crypto exchanges in Hong Kong. We've got another question up here. How will the MTO exchange risk management change with crypto as well? So that's a good one. I think this pertains to the previous slide, this one here. So the MTO in this case is not taking any exchange rate risk because a company like BitSpark is essentially doing all of the trading for them and giving them a rate. So when we give you a rate, we guarantee you that rate, and that is what the transaction is executed at. So there is no exchange rate risk, and how we do that is because we instantly buy and sell. So we are buying at one price and then instantly selling at another price. So we are not exposed to the Bitcoin price going up or down, and even if we were, it doesn't go up or down that much, despite what the media might tell you. Actually, the stock markets have been more volatile over the last year than Bitcoin has, which has been quite interesting.
I mean, so sorry, George, just jump. You're absolutely right. I mean, the pound sterling at the moment is jumping around like a twitchy rabbit. If you try to book a spot rate on the weekend after a certain time, expecting it to reach there on the Monday, it's probably going to move quite significantly. So I think again, because it's 24 hours and you have an immediate rate in front of you, I would say at the moment it is much sort of more safer than what is going on in your usual Euro, GBP, USD market at the moment. It's just absolutely all over the place.
Yeah, and another thing is that because markets are closed on weekends, often you'll see that the rates might not change from a Friday, and then maybe something happens over the weekend, and then on a Monday they might change a lot, and then the exchange rate will jump a lot as soon as it starts trading. But because Bitcoin's 24/7. You don't have to take that risk as well over a weekend if there's some. It happened recently in Indonesia where there was sort of some election information which came out and the currency moved like 10% over a weekend. When everybody opened their eyes on a Monday, the currency had lost 10% of the value, and everybody who was managing remittance balances, well, they took a hit on that one. So yeah, there's these things to keep in mind, but because crypto is instant, you don't have to worry about that because it's 24/7.
And to also add to that, when the Swiss actually depegged themselves from the euro not so long ago, within the space of 15 minutes, I mean, it lost I think 5 to 10%. If you are getting your live rate feeds, obviously every 10 or 15 minutes, that jump can be quite significant. But again, as George just mentioned there, with it being instant, I think you're actually mitigating a lot of that risk.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. We've got another question here. Is there a demo test system that can demonstrate the transaction cycle from start to finish? We do have a test system. So if you want to make an account, on BitSpark, we're happy to do that. It essentially a little bit more about sort of the system here is that BitSpark is more of a back-end provider. Like, we'll help you move the money, whereas RemitONE is the experts in providing the whole systems that manage all of the compliance obligations and all of the different sort of regional specific stuff. So we sort of see ourselves more as like a back-end provider to just sort of move the money, whereas sort of RemitONE is the one which is handling a lot of the systems kind of stuff. So we can certainly help you out if you'd like to do a demo test or something like that. Certainly get in touch with either one of us after the call as well. Question number 3 here, timescales for R1 and BitSpark to roll out the system. Well, it already exists. So we were essentially the first company 4.5 years ago to do end-to-end remittances via cryptocurrency. I say end-to-end because slightly before us, there were some companies that were doing Bitcoin in and cash out, but you had to have Bitcoin. And you had to understand it and all this kind of stuff. Whereas essentially the service we provide is that, look, you put in GBP and you get out Naira or something like that. So you don't have to learn the Bitcoin stuff. It just, you put in one currency and you get out another, and we handle all of the exchange rates. So that already exists. So, you can get up and running tomorrow if you really want to. We had one customer who we met on a Friday and they did their first transaction on a Monday. Here, so that was pretty good. So yeah, that's how it can work. I've got any other sort of questions as well. We've got sort of OTC questions, MSBs. Yeah, so essentially, a lot of the customers who we serve are other MSBs. So the MSB is the one who is facing the customer, right? You guys have your customers. They are the ones who are coming to you. You guys own your customers. We are more sort of a settlement mechanism for MSBs. So some companies that sort of work with us, they just want to do one bulk transaction, and they go, look, I have to pre-fund $100,000 every day or something like that in some currency, and they just do that. Whereas other clients are interested to do sort of smaller individual transactions. So it really depends, where you fit into the different sort of things. We've got a question here: which countries can you do from and to? So right now, Philippines, Indonesia, Vietnam, Nigeria, Ghana, and Malaysia as well. That's for recipient countries, and for the sender side, it's many of the common ones. So UK, Hong Kong, Dubai, UAE, and a couple of others. So we do have a list on the website. We're happy to provide some of that information as well. I might also, I think we've got another quick slide. I might just quickly move on, sorry, and we'll hit some of the questions at the end. But this slide is essentially having a look at some of the different interesting products which are out there. So I mentioned before, you can use Bitcoin for payments. There's a company called Overstock.com, which is NASDAQ listed, a couple $1 billion, something like that. But you can pretty much buy anything for your house on there. So that's a good example. BitPay is another one. That's for, like, if you're a travel agent and you have an invoice and you'd like to receive payment of that invoice in a cryptocurrency, you can do that with somebody like a BitPay. They have, I think, 500,000 or 300,000 people using their system now, which is quite amazing. Bitbond is another interesting one. So they do loans via cryptocurrency, and there's us, which do the money transfers. So this is just some of the companies in this space which do sort of interesting stuff, but there's a lot of opportunities in the sort of different financial products of which you can use the different blockchain tech for. And yeah, so we've sort of gone over a couple of things, and I just want to circle back so that everyone's clear on anything. And if you're not, please let us know. Write in chat or just open your mic up. But we've spoken a little bit about the technology itself. So you remember I mentioned the ledgers, the centralized ledger, where everybody connects to the one system to get updates to their ledger. And then you've got the decentralized ledger, where everybody is connected to everybody. So everybody has a connection to the ledger. So that's essentially what the technology is everybody shares a copy of the ledger. We spoke a little bit about the cryptocurrency remittance and how it works. That diagram up here, which I think is a good one. Where are we? Oops, too far. This one, the conversion from one currency to another currency is the basic principle for how it might work. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. We spoke a little bit about the regulatory environment. Again, it really depends on where you might be in the world, but for the most part, certainly countries that are on the sender side are pretty open to it. Certainly, UK's pretty open to it, which is good to see. Various places in Europe also pretty open to it. Even some jurisdictions are looking to get ahead of the game. Places like Malta, Switzerland, and a couple of others have a specific regulatory guidance just for cryptocurrency and blockchain companies, because they see this as an opportunity. They see this as, can we get more companies coming to our country to do this, and can that bring investment and jobs and so on? So, some places, do have, quite well developed guidelines and so on. And what are some of the cryptocurrency companies doing in terms of AML KYC? That's a good question. Maybe we should talk a little bit about that. But pretty much every cryptocurrency company, even if there is no licensing in your jurisdiction, everybody has to adhere by an AML KYC framework of some such. Certainly we do in Hong Kong under the AML guideline, and pretty much every other company in the industry does as well. Mainly because a couple of things. Number one, our customers are licensed MTOs, so we have to hold ourselves to the same standard as you guys do. So essentially that's the first thing. And the second thing is that many companies are looking to preemptively apply the appropriate AML and KYC sort of guidelines, even without any direct sort of regulation, and sort of doing it voluntarily to sort of set the standards, so that when standards do come along, they will be ready and they won't need to change anything, and they'll be good to go. So we certainly see that in the UK and a couple of other places as well. So you can expect pretty much the same AML KYC processes as you would get from any other company in the MTO space, from when you're dealing with the cryptocurrency company. So yeah, and sort of that wraps up a lot of the sort of spoken webinar. But definitely open to questions. Osama, if you want to add anything, feel free to do that as well, or perhaps we have some sort of questions from the crowd.
Not at all. I think that was brilliant. Thank you so much. It was very informative. I think you've, for myself as well, I think you've really sort of opened up or answered some of the questions that some people might have in the back of their mind. But yeah, no, let's go on some of the questions, and hopefully we can answer some of those for the audience.
Yeah, we've got a great question here from Mohammed, talking about the real problem is the banking restrictions in the UK, and certainly, I heard a lot about that when I was over there recently.
I'm happy to answer that. I probably have quite a bit of experience.
Go for it. Go for it.
Since we're based over here. So Sam, thank you very much for that question. Yeah, the banking restrictions, absolute nightmare in the UK at the moment. If you're going online as well, there is something called PSD2, supposed to open up the banking industry for ourselves, but it's still very, very difficult for us to open a money transfer business account to receive that money in. Now, if you are agent based, and here's the beauty about BitSpark, if you have your license, there's nothing to say that you can't collect cash. It's the bank themselves that are not willing, because it's de-risking, to accept that cash because of source of funds, or for whatever reason. Again, things are shifting towards digital more, but the first, second generation immigrants, they are still very keen on walking into shops and agents and paying that and having that connection. Sometimes they meet the community and making payments in that way. Now, if you collect that cash, the problem is, what are you going to do with it? Now, here's the beauty about BitSpark. BitSpark actually have safe deposit boxes. You may visit one in Heathrow, I believe, one in central London. You may literally put that cash in there. It will appear on your online system. With BitSpark, I've just deposited £50,000, £10,000. So literally, you've bypassed the system, the banking industry. You're not doing anything untoward. You have got your license. It's not the regulators that are stopping you from doing what you want to do. It's the banking system itself. So of course, you that opens up for you can deposit your cash in that safe deposit. It will appear in your online BitSpark platform, and then you can do what you wish with it. You can then, of course, transfer from GBP to Naira, as I said. That back stuff, again, just for layman's terms, from GBP to Bitcoin, and back again from Bitcoin to Naira. Yes, that's mechanically happening in the background. You don't have to worry about that. All that you have to be rest assured and know that you've just deposited this cash with BitSpark. It's on your online platform. Now it will be instantaneously with your payout partner in Nigeria, because they're paying out locally. Don't forget, that's the part where the banks do get involved, where they're converting back from BitSpark, Bitcoin to local currency and then paying out locally. So in terms of the banking in the UK, it's cash. You're collecting cash and you're depositing cash. You're again, you're not doing anything untoward, but you're simply eliminating the middleman there. Anything you'd like to add to that, George? Please, again, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, absolutely, and that was a key thing that we were thinking of, is how do we remove the bank from the equation? Because ultimately, if you are dependent on them in any one way, it can always sort of lead to problems. So if you're a licensed company, you have your license, you do everything right. You just need a way to deposit your money to get it somewhere else. So certainly depositing in cash is I think the best way that we've come up with in order to deal with that problem, and it just sidesteps the whole need for the bank in the first place. Yeah, so that was a great answer. Thanks for that. We've also got a question here talking about an example of how the money is accepted in the UK. And then how is it paid out in Hong Kong? So I think Osama touched on that a little bit, in that there is a cash deposit facility that we operate in the UK. So literally, you can deposit your cash in GBP in the UK. You get a balance in our system, and then you can go and send that somewhere, and wherever that might be. So in the case of Hong Kong, if you go and send it to Hong Kong, it will be paid out by one of our local MTOs in Hong Kong. So they will be the one who's delivering it in the final mile. So as far as you're concerned, you're putting in cash in the UK, and then it's getting delivered by another MTO in Hong Kong to the recipient. So I hope that works. A question about Gabon and a beginner. So certainly welcome all beginners in chat. So that's an interesting one. There's a lot of countries around the world which we get requests for, and we're going to touch on this in some of the next webinars. We're going to touch on how to be able to convey payments to countries which are smaller, don't have as developed financial infrastructure. Nigeria is a big country, right? And then you have a lot of smaller countries where it might be like a Cambodia or something like that. Much smaller population, and not as developed financial infrastructure. So we're going to touch on how can you use this technology to solve some of the problems in those places. But the short answer is that we're going to talk a little bit about stable coins, and we're going to touch on that. So we'll certainly talk about that in the next webinar. But stable coins are essentially a coin which is the same as your national currency. So I could have a Hong Kong dollar coin, and one Hong Kong dollar coin is worth the same as one Hong Kong dollar, or it could be an Indonesia rupiah coin. One Indonesia rupiah coin is worth the same as one rupiah. So that really helps you to be able to transact in all of these different jurisdictions around the world, including places like Gabon or elsewhere in Africa, which are perhaps difficult to access some of the financial infrastructure, which is very exciting. I'm very excited about that as well. We've got another question here about setting up a test account. Yes, I think I mentioned before, we're happy to do that. Certainly get in touch with either Osama or myself after. We'll be happy to direct you in the right place. Have we got any other sort of questions? Yes. So do you deal in just cash? At the moment, yes, we just have a cash deposit place in the UK. However, it is also possible for you to convert your GBP. Let's say if you don't deal in cash and you just deal in bank payments, we're happy to offer some alternative methods for you to convert that GBP in your bank into Bitcoin. And that usually revolves around there's different companies which can offer the service of converting that GBP in your bank into Bitcoin. And then with that Bitcoin, you just send that to BitSpark. And then when we can get that instantly, and then you can send it to Naira or whatever country or currency you might see fit. So even if you don't deal directly in cash, we're certainly happy to find solutions for you to do with that. And we got another question here about sort of the FCA and how they look at cash. I'm no expert. I would have to just defer to Osama on that one, but yeah, we have where can I see actual BTC GBP rate? We have the different rates on the exchange page. If you go to exchange on BitSpark, you can put in one currency and get another currency. If you need any assistance with that, again, just contact us after. Happy to help. So talking about fees here. So any fees depends on currencies. It depends where you're sending to. It depends what currency you're exchanging. So it can really range. That there isn't sort of a set number. We don't take generally more than 0.5% or 0.25% on anything. But it really
again, George, can I just jump in there? Sorry, guys. Yeah, just to reiterate what George is saying. I mean fees and things like that. It will obviously also depend on volumes. I'm taking with everything else, and obviously the kind of corridors that you want to pay out in. But please, again, guys, feel free to drop myself an email or George. I think will be your first point of contact, particularly with the BitSpark rates. It's on his website, as he just mentioned. If not, get hold of him directly. Mention to him obviously the corridors, your flows, your expected flows, which you intend to be doing, and hopefully he can work something out there for you. But guys, yeah, please again, do not hesitate to contact directly, and we can pick this up offline. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. We'll happy to discuss. We've got some other questions here about the vault. So would they be able to accept larger transactions, let's say £50,000? Yes. The vaults, we work with a global vaulting company which has vaults in about 25 different countries. I'd have to double check exactly how many, but it's about 25. So whatever amount it might be, we're able to facilitate that. So certainly get in contact with us. We're happy to talk about that. And have we got any other questions as well? Yep, the rates we've discussed. Yeah, I mean, if you're in the UK or HK, certainly let us know. Happy to meet up, and yeah, happy to discuss. I've got a question here. I can manage to send BTC or altcoins to you from here, and you can send cash to our partner in HK. Yes, that is possible. So if you send BTC, you can also cash it out somewhere as well, in Hong Kong or elsewhere. So whatever's easier for you. If you want to deposit cash, that's up to you. If you want to deposit Bitcoin, you can do that too. No problem there. Any news on PKR? Not at the moment. We're still working on it. It's certainly a currency which is a priority for us as well. So we're looking to add that as soon as possible. No, if there's nothing else, Osama, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No. I think that I'm all good here. But just to reiterate again, if you guys have any more questions or anything you'd like to discuss after this, please feel free. Do not hesitate to contact George or myself, and we'll be happy to assist you then. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for everybody who attended today. Keep in mind, we do have this was a basic overview session, and we went into a little bit of detail, but we wanted to give a sort of broad opening. And then in the next couple of webinars, we're going to delve into some more details about specific maybe countries, specific currencies, and how it might work, particularly for the companies yourselves, and some of maybe the internal processes of your company as well, and give you some examples. So certainly definitely join us for the next one as well, which I think there's an email which has been sent out as well. If you're not familiar when it is, definitely get in contact with us. But yeah, well, thank you very much for all joining, and yeah, happy to discuss. And okay.
Thank you very much, guys. Yep, brilliant. Cheers, George. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Brilliant.